Hello everyone, my name is Enrico D'Agostini and it's my pleasure to introduce today to this special COICA training lecture about concept of smart ports, theory and applications. So before starting this class, let me introduce myself. My name is Enrico, my surname is D'Agostini. I come actually from Italy, from a city called Trieste, very nearby Venice. And I'm also adding here my email, as you can see, enrico.tu.ac.kr. So should you have any doubts or any questions or any curiosity whatsoever on this class, please feel free to contact me anytime at your convenience. So about my educational background, I've got a bachelor degree in international economics at University of Trieste in Italy in 2006. I've got a master degree in shipping management at the World Maritime University in Sweden 2010. I'm also an active member of the Institute of Charter Shipbroker, ICS, located in London, UK, since 2011. And I've got my PhD at KMOU, Korea Maritime and Ocean University in Busan, Korea, 2016. About my working experience, actually my experience is coming from the industry. So I've been working as assistant manager at a company called Nogarosped. I was involved in ship agency, freight forwarding, shipbrokings for handy-sized ships, so dry bulk cargo carriers. I've also had a short experience in Korea as a shipbroker in a company called Ildo Chartering from 2014 and 2014 in the Cape-size deck, so the bulk carriers, bigger ones. I've also been responsible for the Institute of Charter Shipbrokers exam center for the Korean branch. I've been a lecturer as well for ICS since 2018, and since 2019 I've been working as assistant professor at Hamburg University. So the index for today, we will introduce the concept of smart port in theory and in practice by giving example of smart applications. And I've divided really this presentation into 5 major areas. Number 1, what is a smart port? So we will try to define what is a smart port. Second, barriers to develop smart ports. Particularly, the smart port is a new concept, and we need to understand what are some barriers, what are some limitations in which ports and really shipping industry at large might face when developing smart port concept. Then we will move on broad trends for smart ports. We'll see what are the main trends that we encounter today when it comes to smart ports. Fourth, we will see what are the main technology in smart ports. And I will spend quite a bit of time in describing and defining the main technology in smart ports like Internet of Things, blockchain technology, 3D printing, big data, and so on. And finally, we will conclude this presentation by introducing, but really by giving some insight on what could be the future of work in light of smart technology. So by applying new technologies to shipping and to port and really to the transport sector, where are we heading in terms of work, employment, loss, and so on. So let me introduce the first session about what is a smart port. So what is a smart port then? A smart port can be defined as a port that ensures no waste of space, time, money, and natural resources. And really, a smart port can mean many different things depending upon which perspective we look at. And in here, as you can see here, I've divided the smart port into 4 major areas. Asset management, which is how can we improve monitoring and maintenance of port equipment, but as well as port infrastructure via sensors, for example. We will learn that sensors installed in ports can very much help port managers to collect information, to collect data. Later, this data is processed and the output is really given on where can we improve port operations. The second one is energy efficiency, which is very important, the port sustainability via smart technologies. So how can we reduce the environmental footprint, the environmental impacts with, for example, electrification, but in general via smart operations? The third one is safety and security. Again, later we will learn how can we improve safety. So, for example, reducing accidents in the port area via smart technologies. The fourth one, which is very important, is operational efficiency. So how can the port increase productivity or reduce cost more in general by the application of smart technologies? So more generally, a smart port really transforms all aspects of a port's value chain into an open and interconnected ecosystem. And the ecosystem is really connecting different stakeholders of the port. So the people, the productivity of the port, the safety, the sustainability, the digital technology need to be all very much linked with one another. But how does a port become smart actually? So becoming smart means becoming more attractive and more competitive for customers, users, as well as for port's broader community. So again, becoming smart, it's not a port which is isolated and is smart within, but a port becomes smart really if it interconnects the port itself, the customers, and the community as well of the city. So implementation of smart technology means applying new technologies, actually technologies coming from the fourth industrial revolution, like artificial intelligence, like IoT or Internet of Things, big data, and so on, to the port operations. So why should we apply these technologies? Well, to get better decision making and make the port process really faster, cleaner, more agile in general. How should it be done? Okay, we must say that today there is few ports that can be taken as examples of smart ports. So becoming smart, it's not really only a technological application. Becoming smart means the ability to cultivate cooperation between shipping lines, logistic facilities, port terminals, and logistics operators. So again, the challenge is to create an ecosystem of community of interest and practices to make the system as a whole smarter. So as we were saying, a port is a very complex system, and I think you're all very well aware of that. And transforming one of its components does not make the entire port system. So it doesn't make sense to make smart operations in a specific area of the port, but again, we have to consider the port as a whole. So holistic digital transformation of these 4 levels need to take place in order to achieve this goal. What are these 4 levels? Well, number 1 is the internal level. So we need to improve processes and achieve internal digital transformation. So from within the port. The second one is a port level. The port digitization begins to extend beyond each organization internal boundaries. So we know that the port encompasses, is including several actors, stevedores, the port authorities, logistics operator, terminal operators, tugs, pilots, and so on. So the port has to look on all the stakeholders involved. The third one, it's a port community level. So we extend further the smart technology application. So the entire port community in this sense works together to create a connected and coordinated logistics hub. So in this case, we're also involving, of course, companies that works beyond the port boundaries. The fourth one is an interconnected port level. So in this case, people, organization, and objects are all connected and interconnected. In this case, we're talking about infrastructure of the port, the superstructure of the port, the vehicle coming in and out the port, and as well as devices, sensors that help collecting data. So to look at further to set really a smart port vision, the managing body, which usually is the port authority or a company or a parent company, should start by identifying how digital technologies could help meet the port's need in its value chain. So the first question really for the port authority, which is the implementing body, is how can technology support the port activities and what are the port needs? A port is thus a complex system where it's not enough to understand how an individual entity works. It is essential to also understand the relationship between all these entities in order to understand the system. So it is not enough for one entity to implement a smart technology, but rather all these stakeholders need to work in a cooperative way. But there is also some port challenges, and that's very important. So we were saying that a smart port application can be found in very few ports today. Why is that? Well, common port challenges from an operational, from a marketing perspective, are seen from this slide. For example, sustainable expansion and growth of port capacity. So ports today usually have a limited capacity. How can we expand the available capacity? Improving port logistics. For example, how can we improve really port operations from a logistics perspective? The KPIs, the key performance indicator from an operational level, from an environmental level, and so on. How can we integrate port operation within the hinterland? So how can we better connect the port with the hinterland? Digitization and innovation. How can we really reduce cost and reduce bureaucracy via digitization? How can we better have a city-port integration? We will learn this is very important with the example of the Port of Hamburg. The Port of Hamburg in Germany is working very efficiently in digitizing both the port and the city as well. How can we improve the quality of service? How can we be faster? How can we leaner? How can the port be more productive, for example? How can we improve the social sustainability of the port? And last but not least, how can the port improve the environmental performance? So the green KPIs. In this case, I think this is also a very important one when we talk about smart technologies. And particularly ports are looking increasingly at climate change. So how can the port be more resilient with climate change? And water level are increasing, for example. That's a problem for many ports located in island nations, for example. And the other one is emission reduction. So how can we reduce emissions such as CO2, SOx, NOx, particulate matter, and so on. So this is very important because a smart port, so a port that applies smart technologies, could be really having a competitive advantage, could be very much favored in reducing emissions and could favor a green transition. So you probably are very well aware of what are the main sources of pollutions from port areas. So main pollution areas are, of course, coming from air pollution, so mainly from ships, but also from trucks coming in and out the port. The other one is water pollution. So really it's the marine ecosystem that is changing due to marine pollution, and this is due to dredging, this is due to spills, this is due to marine accidents within in close proximity of the port area. So for each of these emissions, we have some alternatives. For example, for air pollution, we can use alternative fuels. We can electrify berth operation. We can electrify the equipment of the port. For water pollution as well, we can have a system in place that monitor the quality of the water. We have a management system for waste, for example, when we have dredging operations. So I'm talking about this because it's very important to understand that a smart technology can very much help in reducing such pollution sources. Even more, we have noise pollution. That's a big problem usually for ports which are located within cities, within urban centers. And noise is very much produced, for example, from the lifting of containers, of cargo in general. So we can have in place a noise management system and sensor that make sure that our noise levels are not beyond a specific level. We have waste as well, for example. We have also landside development, which might produce other pollution in terms of land consumption and so on. So there is many different levels of pollution that once again can be reduced by the application of smart port technologies. In this sense, it's very important also to understand new opportunities for port. And one big opportunity for port hubs might be coming from the circular economy. So ports might serve as intermediaries and transit point for different types of waste and industrial flows, acting as logistics centers for importing and exporting waste material. Ports therefore can use technology and smart processes, smart technology, to help achieve this objective. So as a matter of fact, a smart port can grasp new market opportunities. And I've also added a picture here. You can see the circular material use rate in the European Union in 2020. This is taken from Eurostat. And as you can see, the European Union, there is several countries which are at the forefront of circular economy, particularly the Netherlands. Netherlands, located in North Europe, we will learn that the port of Rotterdam, for example, it's grasping the opportunity coming from circular economy and recycling activities via smart technologies. So the circular economies can be divided into several areas. For example, economics of functionality, second use, reuse, repair, recycling, and valorization. So all these activities might take place for specific cargo flows, for specific products within the port area to add value to the port. Now I would like to show you a video, and this is more an introduction about the application of Industry 4.0 technologies towards digital port container terminals. So this is a video taken from Fundación Valencia Port, and you can enjoy it.
iTerminals 4.0 is an innovation project co-funded by the European Union through the Connecting Europe Facility Program that will implement Industry 4.0 concepts in the port container terminal industry. The project will facilitate the integration of technologies like Internet of Things, big data, artificial intelligence, and cloud computing to improve the efficiency, safety, and sustainability of container terminal operations. iTerminals 4.0 project is coordinated by the Fundación Valencia Port, and the project consortium includes the most relevant equipment manufacturers and software providers, as well as terminal operators all over Europe, proposing new Industry 4.0 solutions, which will be tested at strategic container terminals in ports of the TEN-T network. iTerminals 4.0 is addressing one of the main concerns in the port sector: the absence of harmonized operational and information exchange standards applied by the industry. This is a barrier that causes operational bottlenecks and emission impacts, thus reducing the overall efficiency of these facilities. In response to this, recognized port container operators, equipment manufacturers, and software providers have joined forces, creating the Terminal Industry Committee 4.0. iTerminals 4.0 is an action supported by TIC 4.0 to test and evaluate advanced Industry 4.0 pilots in port container terminals. That will include the upgrade of equipment sensor networks, the design of advanced big data and predictive analytics, the application of artificial intelligence, as well as the provision of business intelligence models and real-time dynamic KPIs reporting. iTerminals 4.0 will test Industry 4.0 technologies in 4 business areas for better decision-making to increase operational efficiency. Container handling operations are the core business for container terminals, and they integrate different interfaces and processes, which are usually fragmented and not well interconnected. The Container Terminal 4.0 will improve existing sensor networks to allow full connectivity and real-time information exchange among different container handling equipment, making possible real-time data analytics. Port operations in container terminals combine human-to-machine interactions that are particularly dangerous considering the dimension, weights, and speeds of the loads moved. iTerminals 4.0 will develop new adaptive safety concepts to enable flexibility and advanced human-machine interaction by combining technologies able to create virtual safety geofences around port equipment, thus avoiding risks and dangerous situations. With more than 250 container terminals in Europe, it is estimated a yearly generation of 1.5 million of CO2 equivalent tons derived from container handling operations. iTerminals 4.0 will enable the measurement in real time of fuel consumption at port container terminals, so that providing dynamic environmental KPIs that will help the port industry to better control and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Finally, port equipment maintenance represents a field where digitization can provide significant benefits for improving preventative and predictive maintenance, thus reducing costs and extending the operational lifetime of port equipment. Thanks to Internet of Things technologies, alarms of failure events will be directly transmitted to the maintenance departments to create repair orders automatically and improve maintenance processes, saving time and increasing port equipment reliability and lifetime. Thanks to the innovative Industry 4.0 solutions and pilot demonstrations, iTerminals 4.0 will enable real-time machine-to-machine communications, detecting operational bottlenecks, and designing real-time KPIs, thus reducing operational costs and environmental impacts, as well as increasing safety at ports. iTerminals 4.0, application of Industry 4.0 technologies towards digital port container terminals.
Now I would like to show you some example of smart ports. So let's look a bit more in practice, some example from smart ports. One very good example, in my opinion, when it comes to smart ports is represented by the Port of Hamburg. Hamburg is one of the leading container ports in Germany and in Europe. So the Port of Hamburg, it was one of the very first ports to launch a smart port project in 2015. The focus is very much on infrastructure, traffic flows, and trade flows. Hamburg Port Authority, which is the governing body of the Port of Hamburg, is developing the concept step by step and aims to present it through concrete projects, so with real applications. Through digitization and automation, critical port logistics processes can be tracked in real time. Port infrastructure management across different transport carriers will be raised to a new level. The future port will have to become an Internet of Things. So the Port of Hamburg will use sensors, networks, and fast, reliable processing of the data with the aid of in-memory computing will provide an exact picture of logistics events at any time. So via the use of sensors, the Port of Hamburg is able to collect information in live, real time, and is able to process this data to sort of see which part of the process might need to be improved, fastened up, or slowed down. So the Hamburg Smart Port project is a good example of applying the fourth industrial revolution to ports. It is come in collaboration with global IT company Cisco. And that's a project that comes from 2000 to 2025. So the Port of Hamburg is really joining up with an IT company. Hamburg Smart Port project is designed to optimize the existing port infrastructure and minimize the port stay time of logistics company. So from a logistic perspective, the idea is to become faster and be able to load and unload, handle traffic in a faster and in a better way. So even more about the Port of Hamburg, the road traffic control room pulls various streams of data to predict travel time into terminals and suggest alternative routes when traffic is heavy. So one interesting idea here is how can the port reduce congestion and get faster. In addition to traffic sensor, data sources include schedule for bridges being raised and lowered, the situation at the container terminal, and other sources as well. And with regard to the Port of Hamburg and the application of Internet of Things, we will go deeper on what is IoT and Internet of Things in a while. But I think this video about the Port of Hamburg is quite interesting to understand a bit better the application of Smart Port in Hamburg and particularly IoT. Another very good example of a port which is applying smart technology is represented by the Port of Singapore Authority. The Port of Singapore Authority has committed about 150 million Singaporean dollars to innovation programs that include automated guided vehicles, known as AGV in ports. So this is the part of automation with regard to the equipment. Crane automation, so automated loading and unloading of containers. Predictive maintenance, so collecting data, processing this data, and making sure that repair and maintenance is done in advance before it's needed. Wharf side automation and video analytic projects for its terminals around the world. So we know that the Port of Singapore Authority is a global terminal operator. So this technology might be used not only within the Port of Singapore, but also to other terminals operated worldwide. Some interesting application for the Port of Singapore represents a connected community. So as we know, as we were saying at the beginning with the definition of smart ports, the port as a whole need to cooperate, and need to be very much connected for the supply chain overall, for the trade flows in and out the port becoming more efficient and more agile. Also, we have machine augmented workforce. In this case, for example, the process might increase the delivery, the quality, the enterprise technology solution through artificial intelligence. Also, we have automated container handling. So in this case, I'm pretty sure you might be aware of how automated crane and automated terminals handling increase the speed of the process and overall outputs within a specific period of time. So in this case, it's very important as an operational KPI improvement. Smart engineering, so in this case, we have machines that are able to perform new activities for new capabilities for port operations. We have orchestrated operation, and that's an interesting one. So a huge amount of data is generated on a daily basis from port operation equipment, such as crane and trucks and systems. And through orchestrated operation, by the use of data analytics, machine learnings, artificial intelligence, and simulation, this data can be used actually to achieve high productivity, asset utilization, and customer service through data-driven decisions. We also have preemptive health, safety, and security. So via the use of new technologies and particularly automation of services, we might be able to reduce accidents within the port area and sort of guarantee the safety and the health of the port workers. The second topic that I'm going to cover within this first session are the barriers to develop smart ports. So some of the barriers and challenges that are encountered to develop and implement smart ports are found in different areas. Number one, in the center of the PPT is the governance. So how does the governance implement smart port technologies? Are there enough financial capabilities? But also there is other issue with regard to change and innovation. How do we justify to port workers, for example, that automation is coming and some worker might lose their jobs? Social rejection. Maybe port unions might protest whenever there is a smart port project coming up. Technology challenges. Are we sure that there is such technologies is available and improved processes and system within the port? How about cybersecurity? There is of course issue with potential cyber attacks. And if so, are we ready? Cooperation. Are we sure that all port stakeholders and port actors are willing to cooperate? Are we sure that logistic companies that are operating in the same port but are competing with each other are willing to share data and information? And are we sure that we can provide qualified personnel to manage such technologies? So let's see a few more details about governance and funding models. So implementing technologies require a significant economic investment. Investment in which areas? Well, investment in infrastructure, in port equipment, particularly with regard to cranes, AGVs, yard equipment, so RTG, RMG, and so on. Softwares. We need to invest in a specific software, and particularly we need powerful software that process data collected. We need to also invest in people, and we need to invest in people with training and education. So the decision maker need to thoroughly analyze the feasibility to the measure and the participation of the public and the private sector. So the financial barriers somehow can be overcome. How? Well, the Port Authority might be prioritizing initiative, for example. A few examples here might be, for example, taking advantage of national or supranational financial schemes or funds, or there is some aid for innovation provided by governments or the European Union, for example, when it comes to European ports. Creating open innovation mechanism, using innovative public procurement mechanism. So even though the port does not have full financial capabilities to fund 100% of smart port technologies implementation, there is other ways that should and need to be explored. The second one is managing change and innovation. And I think that's a very important one. So the transition from a traditional port to a smart port need to be smooth. So the transition to smart ports, of course, involves changes related to technological innovation, increases in efficiency, and greater cooperation between companies, as well as changes in processes, economic approaches, and corporate culture. So to make these shifts, organization must be able to learn and manage changes in human resources. The digital transformation need to be gradual at first, or might lead to gear and disrupt. So as we were saying, this shift towards smart technology need to be smooth and need to be fully understood by the actors involved in the port and beyond the port. The third one is social rejection. This barrier is very important and is associated with using new technologies to replace people and the fear that automating operation and using robots will eliminate jobs. Of course, this is not only in relation to ports, but in transportation, in logistics operation, particularly warehousing, for example, and manufacturing. This probably in port has occurred at a certain level, but not in full. So new trends can be presented and should be presented by the governing body in a better light by showing data on the number of tech jobs that can be created. So somehow jobs are eliminated, people do lose jobs, but there is more job opportunities created for software engineer, for example. And people from the port can be educated and trained to operate specific equipment in the port. So in ports, potential improvements of ergonomic conditions, social and economic conditions, prevention of accidents, and protection of workers from occupational hazards and health risk should be shown. So this is a very important role that needs to be played once again by the Port Authority. Fourth is the challenge of technology. So technology often seems to evolve at a speed that organization workers cannot keep pace with. So sometimes technology is changing very quickly, and ports cannot keep the pace with. However, technology does not seem mature and consolidated enough to be adapted and replace current technologies. So again, the technology is there, and for the port, the most important thing is to implement it smoothly. So organization or ports can develop prototypes, test concepts, and pilot programs to verify a technology's validity and complete the process of learning it. This is very important to make sure that a specific technology satisfies the needs of the port. Fifth is the problem of cybersecurity. So there has been quite a few cyber attacks in the past. I think in 2016 there was a large cyber attack to Maersk, and Maersk in a matter of a couple of weeks lost a lot of revenue due to lost container tracking. They basically lost track of containers. So cybersecurity is a very important issue whenever there is new technologies being applied to transportation and to port. So introducing new technologies or lack of familiarity with them can lead to fear of possible vulnerabilities that could jeopardize digital assets and data. People and companies might be reluctant to adopt these new technologies because of the insecurity they create. Need to create and apply standards and measure for protection against cyber attacks and by correctly configuring system so they're protected. So it's very important whenever the port implement new smart technologies to make sure that the port is protected somehow by potential cyber attacks. The other one is port cooperation. An essential part of the smart port concept is cooperation both within and between companies. When this collaboration is weak or non-existent, the result achieved by implementing technologies will fall short of expectation. To ensure the efficiency of the measure to be taken, all stakeholders must be willing to cooperate to achieve the expected benefits. Of course, this is not obvious. There is companies that might not be willing to cooperate. The public and private sector might not be willing to cooperate together. And even intra-private cooperation is not that obvious. Competing companies might not be very willing to cooperate with each other. So really, once again, the concept of smart ports need to be looked as a whole, as an ecosystem that is well interconnected. The seventh is lack of qualified personnel. So the rise of Industry 4.0 has brought with it a demand for qualified personnel with new professional profiles and skills in areas like data analysis, predictive maintenance, cybersecurity, or blockchain. These are just few examples. There are not currently enough formal training opportunities to meet these demands, and professionals afford to teach themselves. So in the point here is that the ports should really be proactive in terms of education and training within their workforce. So in the future, professionals with design and programming expertise will be the highest in demand. And we will see this at the end of my presentation as well as those with human analytical, problem solving, leadership, and social influencing skills. So the port need to be looked upon really as an innovation ecosystem. And an innovation ecosystem is a new term that came up within smart ports, and is a term which has gained widespread use among those involved in innovation systems. Innovations depends on a wide range of interrelated actors. For example, an innovation ecosystem is making part of several components, namely capital, educational institution, R&D, startups, regulation, and a strong business culture. At an international level, I think the Port of Rotterdam and the Port of Singapore stand out as leader of innovation ecosystem. Let me give you an example for the Port of Rotterdam and for the Port of Singapore as well. As you can see, the Port of Rotterdam has produced a very nice map which sort of resemble a subway map. Sorry. So, and this is really to show how the maritime ecosystem within the Port of Rotterdam is developed. As you can see, we have different areas here. We have an innovation campus, we have education and training, we have a simulation center, we have startup incubators, we have education institution, we have maritime platform. So the idea here is to make the port as an innovative ecosystem with several opportunities. The Port of Rotterdam, for example, is at the forefront for hosting startups in the maritime sector. I think that's very important. Another one is the Port of Singapore. The ecosystem is produced by the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore, and as well as port operator, which are involved in the Port of Singapore Authority International, as well as the local port community. So the ecosystem here is encompassing different players. And the ecosystem, in this case, is known as PRT 716, is made once again of startups. Singapore is a very good hub for maritime and logistics startups, innovation incubators, and R&D centers.